Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This is the first in a series of events that is leading up to a growth summit that FESNAC is going to be having in November. What we've done is broken out specific industry expertise, brought some panelists together that can talk on some particular subjects. We'll have, for those who are interested, we'll have some of these events, two more events, one in June and then one in September, October, leading up to the November event. You can read more about the Growth Summit in the handout that you've been provided there. Tonight's discussion is something that we think is helping companies focus on growth. And we're going to have these experts talk a little bit more about it and try to get some insight into what companies are doing from an outsourcing standpoint. These folks are focused on consumer products. We've had a lot of success in our outsourcing group helping companies that are focused in the consumer product space. It seems that there's a tendency for those companies to operate virtually and also be able to recognize core competencies and also use outsourcing to leverage competitive advantage in the marketplace. So we're going to learn a little bit about that more this evening as well. I think we've got a unique perspective set up for you this evening. I'm not going to go into full bios. That too is in the information that you should all have received about the event. But to my far left, I have Doug Haas. Doug is the president and COO of Ultimark. Ultimark is a brand management company. They own a variety of brands. And Doug is going to talk specifically about sourcing and contract manufacturing. They utilize that to help to leverage their model in the industry. To my immediate left is Matt Poley. Matt is with Emerson Marketing. Emerson Marketing is within the Emerson Group. You'll hear more about the Emerson Group and how Emerson Marketing and Emerson Healthcare fit together. But Matt is working with and talking to companies from a consumer product standpoint that are looking at provide or outsource some of their marketing expertise to folks who are in the space in and out of it every day. To my immediate right is Patrick Gibbons. Patrick is one of the founding partners of Emerson Healthcare, a division of Emerson Group, and I think we'll give Patrick a minute to talk about the relationship of those companies in a minute here, just so you understand that as we go through. Patrick is going to talk about fulfillment and logistics, obviously getting your product on the shelf, moving your product through the distribution channels, the supply chain, and out to finally customers. So it's going to give some good insight on that. And to my far right is Jim Caruso. Jim is a partner in FESNAC Outsourcing, LLC, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of FESNAC, LLP. Jim oversees that outsourcing group. Combined up here, we have about 60 years of consumer products experience. So we think we've got a great dissection of different disciplines within that space and also some fantastic expertise and knowledge that comes along with that. I think all of us, if you look at consumer products, that's one area where we can all see some drastic change over the years of how customers buy consumer products and where they go to buy them. You used to see mom and pop hardware stores, pharmacies, department stores, all that was very local. And then obviously the world of the big box stores came about. And now, of course, we have the internet gives us access to many consumer products. So it's going to be interesting to get an idea and some perspective from these gentlemen on how companies, both big, small, and emerging growth companies, can use outsourcing and what they should be looking for. So as I mentioned before, in our outsourcing group, we've seen consumer products companies be more apt to accept that virtual model. So I just wanted to kind of kick it off and get the conversation started, and maybe start with Jim. But what makes consumer products uniquely suited for outsourcing? Like why is that an issue you're even talking about or considering for outsourcing? You want to take that to begin, Doug?
Sure. I think what I've seen in the industry in the last several years is it's really a natural growth in that these brands became consumables. They're large quantity manufactured brands. They became very interesting to, investment groups that weren't interested in the process of manufacturing brands. And then at the same time, I think the big companies that did have the brands and they were diversifying and selling off some of their brands, they ended up with manufacturing capability. So it's rather ironic that some of these brands ended up right back at the same manufacturers with a different owner. And that capability is what's really driven the outsourcing, I think. And it's kind of funny, too, that in the industry, I benefit from my competitors' success. So as they're doing well and they're manufacturing more, the efficiencies get better at the manufacturer, and I get to pick up on some of that, too. So it's kind of self-fulfilling, and it's really the growth and how it's gone over the last few years.
So the change in the industry has really kind of driven a lot of that consideration.
It's driven a lot of that. One of the challenges in the industry, if you have a smaller brand, for instance, one of our brands is Denorex, and it does very small numbers compared to other brands in the industry. Finding the right manufacturer for that's been a challenge because a lot of the small manufacturers have gotten driven out of the market now. So you continually are challenged to find those right-sized manufacturers that can manufacture at the right quantity, right level, and not overproduce, that you're carrying costs on your inventory are too high. So those are some of the challenges, but also, you benefit from the growth factor, too, of everybody in the industry.
Well, we definitely want to get into some of the challenges a little bit, but Patrick, why don't you talk to me about, maybe just give us a quick overview, too, of Emerson Healthcare, Emerson Marketing, so everybody understands from the context of the conversation. And then tell us why you think consumer products are uniquely benefited from that outsourcing model.
Sure. I want to give a little framework of the Emerson Group, which is the parent company, and why it really came to be, and how outsourcing really is everything that we are. We benefit from using outsourced resources, and we are an outsourced resource, so it's really part of our DNA. But our concept was, a couple of us in 1994 were working in the big pharma world, and our business happened to be the Maalox business. And like everything in the pharmaceutical world, ownership changes, mergers, and we were up to have our heads chopped at that point because our division was bought by Novartis. We worked for a company called Rhone-Poulenc, that's now Sanofi Aventis. And we looked around and we had job offers, a couple of us, and our managing partner, Scott Emerson, came up with the idea that, we can really recreate ourselves like a Procter & Gamble, because we can go out and get 5, 6, 7 salespeople and cover the nation pretty efficiently. And what's happening is when you go for one company like a Procter & Gamble, like Johnson & Johnson, you go in and make your sales call, say for Tylenol, you're there for one sales call, seeing one category manager. So the concept was if we took on 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 companies and made a sales call every hour, you can make 6, 7 sales calls a day. So that's one salary, one plane ticket. So we really saw in 1994, there's advantages here for that person's expertise, but to represent many different companies. So we did that. And early on, we saw the challenge was we would go in, and you're taught in business school that you've hit it when you bring this proposition to a buyer. We'd go in with a widget, and the widget would be less expensive, higher quality, right? We're all taught job's done, write the order. So let's say we go to Rite Aid, say, we have a less expensive, higher quality widget than anything that's out there. We hear back from the buyer, I just as soon buy the less quality, higher priced Procter & Gamble widget. And you just like, wow, we're hearing that again and again. Well, the issue was, we sat down with a couple of our buyers and took a deep dive. When Procter & Gamble places an order, that circuit for a purchase order is $35. That's the labor that they put into it with their people in-house, with 4,000 SKUs on a $35 purchase order. Then I walk in with 3 or 4 SKUs, and you do the math, and you take 35 times 1,000 different vendors versus Procter & Gamble, it's 35 times 1. You see the costs are just dramatic. and retailers understood that. So out of that was born an idea that, boy, wouldn't it be great if I could go in there and take the manufacturers that I'm representing on a sales basis, which is where we make our living, and put them in the same warehouse on the same purchase order. So that's where Emerson Healthcare was born out of. So we took our clients, brought them together with the outsourcing over to FESAC, the accounting, because we don't know anything about that. We just knew we want to get them on a purchase order, collect the money, and get them paid. So we had to build a pretty sophisticated model to get that done, but it sounds very simple. What we found right away was you take all these companies, and we weren't thinking this, all we wanted to do was go to a buyer and sell the better widget at a cheaper price. That's what we cared about. And then we can run from there. But we learned right away, of course, but we weren't thinking it, you put more cases on a truck, it's cheaper to ship. You have all your stuff in one warehouse, all of a sudden there's a lot of labor efficiencies. So we took these freight efficiencies, these labor efficiencies, and we delivered them to our clients. So now it really is like a mini Procter & Gamble that we're competing on a more even playing field. From there, we determined a lot of these people, and I'm not going to steal Matt's thunder, but a lot of these people don't have the marketing know-how and capability that we have. So they're in-house, we have the connections, we have folks that have years and years of experience, like Matt heads up our marketing group at Johnson & Johnson. He worked on the Tylenol business, and we can lend that service out to our clients. So that's really the framework for Emerson Group. So again, we make our living at selling, and we support that living with our logistics solution and our marketing solution.
Well, it's great. So in 1994, maybe you're a little bit ahead of the curve, right? But you learned along the way and added the components that made the outsourcing offering even stronger. So it sounds to me, Jim, like a lot of what you talked to me about, and that shared services model that very large companies use. Why don't you talk a little bit about why you think consumer products companies are fit for that outsourcing model?
Well, I think consumer product companies clearly understand virtual business models. As Doug said, they're very comfortable outsourcing the manufacturing, outsourcing logistics to companies like Emerson, and to outsource the accounting is really not a big stretch if you've already outsourced some major operations in that manner. As Doug mentioned, he benefits from the success of his competitors because the plants he buys from are running more volume and have efficiencies and lower costs, and it's the same when you can benefit from economies of scale of other clients of ours that use our accounting operations, rather than have their own internal staffs that they may not 100% utilize or be unable to get the talent. They can use us to deliver on that in an economical way. Similar to Patrick's story about one buyer having to go in and talk about one product and buy a plane ticket and all of that, as opposed to having an Emerson representative represent multiple products and divide that cost over several companies, we're able to divide the cost of a strong finance function among multiple companies.
Great. Well, Tom Peters, management guru, we often quote him, do what you do best and outsource the rest, right? So what is it that you do best? Like what are consumer products companies, taking a step back and saying, okay, we outsource their non-core functions. What are the core functions that you're seeing consumer products companies focus on? Matt, you want to take that?
Sure. So from our perspective, and I look at our client base, I think there's like 3 or 4 segments of clients. There's the private equity client, there's the classically trained consumer packaged goods industry client, and then there's the affectionate mom and pop client, which, by the way, is our favorite client. I think Patrick said it well. We have a very challenger and underdog mentality as a culture, and so we love to root for the little guy, and that's where these folks kind of live. The private equity client, I think they believe their core competency is making money, and they're really not interested in the day-to-day operation. They're interested in the P&L. And so from an outsourcing perspective, when you look at a firm like the Emerson Group with kind of the 2 legs that support the selling effort, we're turnkey for them. Time is money, speed, etc. We've got the relationships. The classically trained CPG client can come in a couple forms. We've had a client where she cashed in all of her marbles, started a brand, managed the heck out of that brand, and did a phenomenal job, and then sold it to a bigger firm. And she would say that her core competency is the understanding of the consumer. Then you get a little bigger tier of that classically trained, where you're taking industry vets that want more responsibility that's not being fulfilled in the P&G or J&J world, and they go to a medium-sized firm, and they're looking at us as a cost savings because they want to plow more money into the marketing effort. And then the mom and pop has a love affair for their brand and their consumer, but they just don't simply have the resources. They know their consumer, they know their brand, and they want to be able to leverage what we bring to the party. So there's not, within those segments, there's not one core competency, I think, that weaves all of them together. I think that in an outsourcing world, from what we see, these are the types of segments that we're engaging with, and the competency is driven by either profit, technical expertise that they want to grow by running a smaller business but having more responsibility, or I love this brand and I love my consumer and I wouldn't even know how to get to Walmart, and you guys can do all that for me and I don't have to worry about it.
Great. Ideal situation, right? That's great. Doug, why don't you talk specifically about, from Walmart's standpoint, what are you willing to outsource, and what is it that you want to keep close internal and have the most control over and the most impact on?
I think for Ultimart, to back up a little bit, we picked up the consumer brands in 2008 with a group of investors in the local Philadelphia market who wanted to get into some personal care items, bought certain brands at the time. And it's funny because if you ask me what the core competencies were at that time, I'd have told you something entirely different today. So it's evolved over time. Recognizing the brands, what you can actually do with them, I think does drive your core competencies and what you should be focused on. Hence, over time, we used to have a fully functioning accounting department 2 years ago. And we since then outsourced that to Feznek. At the time, we were just an Emerson client. We evolved into being a Feznek client also. We're saving, I don't mind sharing with you, probably over $150,000 a year to the bottom line, just on cost. So I think right now our core competencies are, operational core competencies in managing the brands, managing the cost savings. Will that change tomorrow? If we did buy a brand, we thought there was some marketing capabilities, and we might try to do something a little bit differently as a company. But I think as a company, I don't think anyone of us could say our core competencies in this marketplace are this at the moment, and they're going to stay that way. They can change over time, and that's one of the really unique things about being able to outsource. It's there, and again, the depth of the breadth. There's unbelievable depth to my accounting department now. Where I had 2 or 3 people in the past, and now I have, unlimited resources at a cost savings. So I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. Unlimited resources. You want to talk a little bit about that, Patrick? Because that's probably when your clients look to you, that's where they want to be, right? Feel bigger and
That's exactly right.
Compete more readily in the marketplace against the big guys.
Yeah, so what we're able to do, we kept a clear mission for our company, and the clear mission is we're a sales company, and we call on the retailer. Everything we do is to support that. So Emerson Healthcare, which is our logistics group and our marketing group, is designed to support that sales effort. And we take that sales effort and give it to our clients. And how we're winning every day we put everything we have against those resources, our salespeople. And where we win every day, our managing partner and owner, Scott Emerson, says, I'm competing against people at J&J, NBAs, but where we're beating them is these NBAs want more out of life than to call on the retailer. So we've brought executives in who all have sales responsibility. Our owner calls on Rite Aid. Our other 2 top executives, executive president, call on Walgreens and Walmart respectively. So now you have people with their main job at executive levels, who think like executives, who have executive responsibility within our company and with consulting with our clients, who are calling on the retailer, and they're going to be calling on that retailer forever. So when you have that J&J person coming in, that Procter person coming in for 4 or 5 years and transitioning to something else, we're there, we're in the hallway. Because we're there for 40 clients who represent 1.7 billion, my group will ship a $500 million. But because we represent so many, we're in that hallway. So someone walks down the hallway, we're able to grab them and talk to them. We know them, we're involved, we know their families. So there's a deep connection. Everything we do within Emerson Group is designed to support that effort. If you look at my group, the logistics group, it's not rocket science. Put more stuff on a truck, it's cheaper to ship than if you put less stuff on a lot of trucks. So why aren't a lot of people doing that? And why can we do this without much competition? Because everybody else wants to make money at it. We're not trying to make money at the logistics group. We give it back to our clients. What we're trying to do is be better salespeople. We've never taken our eye off of that ball. We want to sell more stuff. So because my group offers a logistics solution to my company, my salespeople, it's a lot easier for them to sell stuff. So we sell more stuff, and the more stuff you sell, the more money you make. And our reputation grows. So all of this has come from giving unlimited resources to our number one outsource function, which is outsourced sales.
Interesting. Jim, can you talk a little bit about what you've seen with clients taking advantage of outsourcing to create that competitive advantage?
Yeah, well, what we see is that middle market companies, they simply cannot get the same talent that we're able to offer. For one thing, they often have budgeting constraints where they may be only able to afford 1 or 2 people in their finance and accounting group, and that sets them up in a situation where those 1 or 2 people are expected to do too many different things. There's a spectrum of skill sets from bookkeeper to controller through CFO, and those skills don't exist in the same person. And to try to get them in a 1 or 2 person group is next to impossible. Even in larger middle market companies, it's difficult to get the talent because people don't see a career path. They know that there's a CFO ahead of them that may not go anywhere for a decade, and they just aren't interested in that opportunity because there's not enough career mobility. When we're able to get the talent, because there's a career path with us as part of our growth, everybody has a path to partner within the outsourcing group. So we're able to get talent, and we're able to attract folks from much larger companies, and now that large company experience in turn is able to be made available to small to mid-sized enterprises that ordinarily couldn't afford it.
Great. Does anybody else have any? You look at this as a real way for startup, emerging growth. You mentioned, a pool of investors kind of coming together and it's starting out, just owning a couple brands. Can you talk a little bit about that? How have you been able to compete? We heard a little bit about it from Patrick, but Doug, can you comment on that at all? What abilities that's giving you from an outsourcing standpoint?
Well, it's rather interesting. We actually owned our own manufacturing facility in Grandview, Missouri that was completely separate from any of the personal care space items or any of the mass retailers. But in the time that was closing down, this is just a little bit of the story, I actually challenged the group to, why do we have to use Fesnick, and why do we have to use Emerson Group to do our shipping when we have a factory that's perfectly capable of it? And I had to do the numbers, I had to do the study, couldn't compete. We were losing probably over 30 cents a pallet on outbound freight. We could, the efficiencies just aren't there. It's the scale. It's completely the scale of what the Emerson Group offers. The efficiencies are there, and I benefit from that. So as we first bought our first couple of brands and then evolved and bought another brand and a couple more along the way, it just kind of grew into, and now we're very competitive in the marketplace. And my costs are relatively stable. So it gives me a very competitive edge. So.
Do you see consumer access to more brands and a variety of brands because of that? If you think, the big boys are up here, right? They're trying to control a few very successful brands. But in this market, you can, in the lower middle market or emerging growth, you can have multiple brands that aren't quite as big, but have laser focus on them. Is that a trend that you see? I mean, is that a benefit of all of this?
I think, and Matt can comment on this too in a little more detail, but what we've seen in the marketplace is, the consumers were being very restricted on what their choices would be in the market. It was SKU rationalization of the flavor of the month a year ago. Correct, Patrick?
Yeah, so SKU rationalization, I'll come right back to you, is basically retailers saying, we're going to give the consumers less choice. It's more efficient for me to deal with less SKUs in the store, eliminate the confusion. But it kind of backfired because consumers really want their choice, and I'm going to pump this to Matt, because he can really get into, why you need something other than the big brands, and it's kind of what we call a picture frame. Matt, if you want to take that.
Sure. So the health and beauty industry in the United States is $82 billion. The top 12 CPG companies are 50% of the market. So to frame in the context of our firm, we're 1.7 billion, and our market is 42 or 41 billion. I mean, we don't even scratch the surface of market share. When you look at some of the major categories, some of the mass brands, if you take a brand like Prilosec, a brand like Tylenol, Claritin, Listerine, retailers not making any margin on that business. It's a share grab, it's big dollars, and with Walmart's strategy of everyday low price, they're driving margin out of retail. So that middle market that you refer to and kind of the mix of our portfolio is made up of brands that aren't the mass brands, and our contribution is profit. So we did an analysis on our portfolio relative to a J&J, Procter & Gamble, and all in, our margins are like 55-65% to the retailer, where in some of the larger companies, the margin may be the high teens or the low 20s. So it's a classic scenario of Pareto, where 20% are doing 80% of the volume. In this case, it's reversed, that it's on a profit margin basis. So if you bring it back to outsourcing, and I think you touched on this really well, it's easy for us to think about our portfolio because we're 1.7 billion and Patrick's shipping 600 million, and it's a great sales pitch to the retailer, it's a great sales pitch to prospective clients in terms of come on board to the scale. But if you're looking to invest in a business or start a business, you have to really understand the facets of the business and what scale can do for you in terms of, here's an operator that said, I took a lot of money to the bottom line by outsourcing, that I'm focusing on the P&L of my business basically, general managing all of the operations, but letting the outsource manage the day-to-day. We look at some of the clients that we have that if they were shipping less than truckload, I couldn't even imagine what their freight would be. They're going for the ride on a $600 million a year logistics business where it's pennies on the dollar. In my organization and the work that we do, if you look at marketing as a whole, whether you're Procter & Gamble or you're a small organization, you're outsourcing your marketing function. A true marketer is focused on their consumer, their brand position, and they're general managing the P&L of the brand. Madison Avenue is full of outsourced agencies that are pitching business to big brands to be their agency of record, to do the creative advertising that you see on TV. And so, much like Patrick started, just you can kind of see a trend within our organization, it's the same model in terms of what we did, the efficiencies on the selling, the efficiencies on the logistic. What I've done is I've created a virtual agency where we have best-in-class research, positioning, design, media buying, creative strategy agencies that are our model that we make available to our clients. And the benefit to our partners is they don't have any business development expense because we're working with the brands and developing the relationship and then bringing the agency in as needed. The benefit to the client is they're getting the scale or sharing the scale of big brand thinking as a percentage on the dollar. And really what it comes down to, and Doug said it best, improve my P&L so I can invest in the business to grow it. That then ultimately allows you to look for other opportunities within the category that you may be able to grow your business, whether it's through acquisition.
Yeah, by ultimately trying to achieve one thing and we stay laser focused on that. See, Doug just said it right there. I did a study. So if I'm taking profit out of what Doug was studying, he's going to get close enough to say, I'm going to do this myself. Because Doug wants to do it himself. Everybody wants to. You want to do it yourself. That's running a business. You want to control as much as you can control, unless you put it in the hands of people who operate it better. And our report card typically on operating better is profit, but also quality. So the second that somebody can start getting closer in that cost scenario, they go away. So we knew that right away. Our goal is not to make money in marketing and not to make money in logistics. It's to provide those tools so we can make money in sales. So that's where our profit margin is. So that's where we have to compete. So how do we outcompete? By giving better tools. We think we have the better salespeople because we have executives that are doing it for 15 or 20 years. These big guys are just making it easy for us to beat them. But when you walk into a retailer and the retailer says, I don't want to buy your cheaper, higher quality product, you got trouble. You got a problem there. So we address that. And again, we stay laser focused on what our core competency is and what we want to accomplish. It's tempting to say, oh my God, I'm saving so much money and I'm bringing freight down even lower. Why don't I just keep it even and not tell anybody and just take that? But we pass it on because I want Doug not to have an easy decision. I know if Doug's doing it, everybody else is out there looking to see, can I do this myself better? And, it's the first I ever heard of that tonight, by the way. I'm not surprised.
So we've got breaking news here, which is very exciting. You can see some of the difficulty and the trends that we're talking about, with the SKU compression and dealing with these big box stores, and really that leveraging that outsourcing model. But you just said it. Everybody would like to do it themselves, and a lot of companies start out trying. You started out trying, and some companies still are struggling to try. So what's the catalyst, or what should we be looking at? Is it that study of your manufacturing plant? What are how can you look at some of these areas and say, does outsourcing really make sense for my business? Can I be more competitive? Can I be more cost efficient? How do you go through that process internally in a company?
Internally, what we say in Emerson Healthcare when I'm speaking to a prospective client looking to bring their logistics business in is, we call this, let us do the non-value added. And what we mean by that is, in the logistics world, if that product that Walmart orders arrives to their DC on time and in good shape, you do not get a phone call from Walmart saying, great job, we got your shipment. Good work. So that's non-value added. It's expected. If you do everything perfect, you don't add any value to what you're doing. It's expected. So we're doing this every day, and I say to my prospective clients, let us do your non-value added. We've been doing it for 10 years. We know what we're doing. We're going to get it done in a quality manner, and it's very, very cost effective. You take those assets that you're thinking about putting against your human resources and redeploy them into strategic areas where if you make a sale, you get a phone call and you got a new distribution in CVS, great job. That's where you want the closest people to you, the passion that's managing the brand, managing the passion and the strategy that's going to drive the brand. So let us handle those non-value added activities. So that's kind of my pitch.
How about you, Jim? How do you have that conversation, or what have you seen when you're talking to companies about considering that model of outsourcing versus doing it themselves?
I think it's very similar to what Patrick said. I mean, we don't get a lot of calls saying, what a beautiful set of financial statements you put together this month. But, the work needs to get done, and you keep things running smoothly, and we keep it out of companies' hair, and particularly with entrepreneurial management teams that really want to focus on growing the business and growing a brand. They're happy to know that all of the compliance and reporting is taken care of, and then we focus on trying to add value at the higher levels, trying to communicate insights from the numbers, taking the historical information, helping them make future decisions, supporting the management team, trying to find ways to add value all the time. Companies don't really care about accounting or how it gets done, they just know it has to get done, but it does provide valuable insights to run the business, and that's what we try to focus on. And to Patrick's point about cost, I mean, sure, that's critical, but there are so many other qualitative factors as well. Quality was mentioned, on a level of talent, scalability, best practices, just to be able to redeploy internal resources and not be able to have to, not to have to manage an accounting group. I mean, these are all qualitative advantages as well, so it goes far beyond cost.
So just to follow on this, who's heard of the brand Airborne? So everybody knows the story of Airborne. It was a school teacher, concocted this up, sat on Oprah, voila, she's an $80 million brand. I can tell you that in the 3.5 years I've been at the Emerson Group, we've had a lot of prospective clients come in, not mentioning Airborne, but of course every one of them, the common thread is, I'm the next. My brand, my widget, this is the greatest thing ever. And Patrick articulated it differently in saying, have the passion for your brand. That's exactly what an entrepreneur, proprietor, a brand person has, and you need to have that. 90% of products fail. And so I think that when you look at kind of a firm like the Emerson Group and what we offer the consumer products industry, Fesnac and what they offer, what you have to consider is the experience that we have in the core competency in the functional areas. And I think the value that outsourcing brings is it helps you not make the mistakes that you don't know that you're going to make. Fesnac has done financial statements and P&Ls and everything for 100 years. There's not going to be anything they haven't seen. Patrick, he talks about the logistics model and helping folks make the tough, not have to make the hard decision. There's truth in that in terms of it's dollars and cents. It's what's it going to cost me to get from point A to point B. Our selling organization, Scott Emerson will say to us time and again, our job is to say no more than it is to say yes to the client. Because you take a customer like Safeway, it'll cost you more money in returns, and they'll make more profit by putting your product on the shelf, it not making the cut, and it coming back to you. And those are the pitfalls that, because you love your brand, as you should, you love your consumer, as you should, but this is the business side of it. Target gives you 4 months. You're on the shelf in Target, you don't make the grade in 4 months, they're sending everything back. And all of a sudden, you've got 200,000 pieces of your product that you don't know what to do with, and you're trying to find a home. So I think that outsourced firms that have proven themselves time and again are going to have the expertise in seeing all of the pitfalls, all of the failures, all of the wins, and they're going to make you smarter in terms of how you go to market with your business and let you, there's 2 things you have to focus on: getting it on the shelf and then connecting with the consumer to get it off the shelf. Because in our world, it's an item business. It's a brand, but it's an item business. We live in the world of hurdle rates. You have to do $1.5 million a year in many health and beauty categories at Walmart to stay on the shelf for next year. And if we're doing our job right, we're telling you whether we believe that you can do that, and then we're going to execute the plans to make sure that that happens. Because the last conversation we ever want to have with a client is, you've just been discontinued.
So you can be somewhat selective on the front end as well. What kind of process do you go through? Explain that a little bit to say, yeah, this is going to be a brand that is going to meet that hurdle, or it's not.
Well, it's funny. Scott's been doing this for so long, and he has such great gut in understanding what can be successful and not. And I mentioned kind of the underdog client. We really do love that, because when we understand the story and we put a lot of value in relationships, we feel that having that partnership long-term is going to be successful for everybody. We are a buy and hold firm. If we can partner with private equity and they can make 4 times what they bought it for, it happens. But as Scott would say, our success is our demise. We built your distribution, we grew the brand, you sold it, and now we're out of a revenue stream. I think that we push on your belief in the brand. We push on what's the true point of difference. Everybody's widget's great, but I'll tell you what, we'll send you to Walgreens and they'll show you 100 of what you just showed them, and they'll say, yep, you saw this yesterday, the day before, the day before. And then what's the client commitment? The industry, the consumer products model is very simple. Build awareness, get trial, repeat the purchase. And somebody's ability to understand that and make a commitment to that goes a long way in us thinking that the product would have success.
You know, we saw in my career in consumer products, and Matt was able to witness it along with me, very few revolutionary ideas that really rocked our world. And one example recently, and I'm going to bring outsourcing into it because it's a company from Mexico that has a core competency in film and creative. And they flipped the model upside down and are knocking Procter & Gamble's socks off in Mexico. And what they did was, for the first time, they came in to see Scott and I 7 or 8 years ago and said, I don't care about the brand. Could care less. Give me anything. Find me something. Put some skin, anything. Go to a contract manufacturer. Give me lotion. Give me the knockoff Gold Bond. Give me anything. Skincare, headache. What I'm going to do is I'm able to make a commercial in 3 days because I have models, actors, actresses, and a studio. And I have an ability to look at POS, and what POS is the scan data from a retailer. So that's what I mean when I say POS. I have an ability to look at that daily in the stores I'm in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a product on the shelf from my strength, and I'm going to shoot a commercial on Saturday. It's going to be on air on Monday. I'm going to look at the sales Monday through Friday, and if it peaks, I got a product. If it doesn't, keep the product, I change the commercial. Now Procter & Gamble takes 3 or 4 months, and they're like the best and fastest in the industry, to get a commercial to air. So for the first time, these people outsourced the key part of the business, the brand. They outsourced that. I don't care about the brand. What I care about is talking about the brand differently than Procter & Gamble does. So there's an example of someone who just went I mean, my jaw dropped when they told me what they did, and I said, these guys, you know, if you know anything about business in Mexico, you gotta watch yourself. And I said, and the owner was like, I don't believe it. I said, you gotta come in and look at this. So we went down and looked at their studios, and it was like you were walking into Universal. So what they did was they completely flipped the idea of how you go to market with a consumer packaged goods. And said, I don't care about the brand, I care about the message. So a lot of times the lesson is, you know, think about what's important, and maybe sometimes you can flip that and use outsourcing in a different way, and that's what they did.
That's interesting. Any other trends that anybody's seen, something different that clients maybe are doing or looking at or considering? Either outsourcing or considering it as a core function? I guess no one can top that, Patrick. That was pretty good. That was very interesting and game-changing. I guess Procter & Gamble is probably rethinking their model right now, right?
Yeah, well, so what's happening is, of course, they're looking into America, because everybody knows what's happening in America when I say the browning of America in consumer products. You know what I mean by that? Is that the Hispanic market's coming in and growing and growing and growing, so everybody wants a piece of it. Walgreens, Walmart. So this company's coming in, and their intention is to use this model in the U.S., but with their expertise of that Hispanic shopper, which is where everything's moving, especially in beauty care. I mean, in beauty care, you know, the 15-year-old Hispanic girl drives that market. I mean, that's everyone's trying to see what she's doing, and what she's doing follows that market. But you can take that out from the 15-year-old Hispanic girl and take that to all Hispanic. It's really a growing trend. It's moving. Every retailer, every marketer, and every manufacturer is paying attention to it.
Yeah, I think, Mike, when you talk about trends, what we see on the finance side is, you know, there's been an evolution over time where originally the only functions that were outsourced in accounting and finance were those that were routine, transactional, and rules-based. So, you know, payroll was one of the first things to be outsourced. You know, things like accounts payable, accounts receivable. Now it's moving more up the value chain, more towards value-added functions, you know, analytics, financial planning and analysis, budgeting, forecasting, and even the controller CFO role itself. So I think that when you look into the future, you know, the same way, today, almost every company outsources payroll, right? It's almost automatic, you know, it's almost assumed that they'll outsource their payroll. You don't really see payroll supervisors in too many companies these days. And I think other positions will go that route. You know, certainly in large companies, there'll probably always be a controller or an accounting manager. But in companies of a certain size, I think there'll come a day where those positions really aren't seen too frequently anymore.
Well, that's an interesting point, Jim. Maybe everybody can kind of talk about where they see the trends going. For instance, is contract manufacturing, is that a mature, I mean, everybody kind of gets that process. Is that a fairly mature industry from an outsourcing standpoint? Marketing seems to be maybe something new, right? Everybody initially thought maybe that was your core competency, but realizing if you bring in some experts. And so is there a significant upside in trending growth in that area? So maybe, Doug, you want to start first?
I think on the manufacturing side, probably in the future holds is probably, you know, as things move back domestically, potentially from overseas, some of the big brands are going to recognize, you know, domestically is probably the more cost-effective way to do it. Probably the trend's going to be towards restricted capabilities. That's one of the things I think we have to be aware of moving forward and securing our place in those as smaller manufacturer clients to some of the bigger companies. That's probably one of the things that's trending in the future. Also, you know, from a logistics standpoint, you know, transportation's always a challenge. So that's continually, you know, and I think we have to change that mold up a little bit of what we traditionally thought, you know, where rail wasn't the thing to do. Maybe it is, you know, maybe it does become more cost effective. So I think there's a bunch of things on the horizon from a manufacturing and logistics that we have to be aware of, and just keep our eye on it and know where we're at in the whole process.
What are you doing to keep an eye on those trends and measure that? And do you have a part of your business where you spend into that, or is it just kind of looking at the marketplace to see where that's headed?
I think it's really maintaining good relationships with the manufacturers, close relationships with them, and not too much from a too far of a distance where you kind of get a feel for what's going on and what's happening. And I think that's probably the best you can do at the moment. And, you know, talk to them, get that communication lines open and know what's happening in their world and stay plugged in.
How about you, Matt? What from a marketing standpoint, is it a growing trend?
Yes, so in terms of you as our audience tonight, I'm going to make the assumption that you're not in big, large CPG companies. So you're going to serve as the brand steward. And your responsibility to the brand and to your business is to grow it, make a connection with the consumer, get them to buy the product. So from a trend perspective, we're all familiar, I would presume, in crowdsourcing. And in our side of the business, from a creative perspective, crowdsourcing is when you'll go out and put up on a bulletin board or in the internet and say, hey, I've got this problem that I need to have solved. And freelancers will come in and they'll offer you their pitch on how they can solve it. So there are companies now that are forming that are solely that middle person or that middle company that says, what's your problem? I'll go do the bulletin board, vet through the freelancers, and then they can work on a project basis. So I think it's a formal, informal, if you will, form of outsourcing where it's more project-based and problem-solving based. But I think one of the pitfalls and one of the areas that I'd advise, strictly from a marketing perspective, is you have to stay true to what your objective is, the brand positioning, and your strategy. So let's take digital. Let's take the trend of digital advertising. Not specific to outsourcing, but can fall from in the agency world. The internet has provided an infinite amount of advertising. There's no end to the advertising that can be done on the internet. So as you think about what you're doing, whether you're using a marketing agency to help you or you're out there, every organization that you speak to is going to talk to you about how they can reach the consumer. They're going to talk to you about a measure called CPM, cost per thousand, where you're weighing the cost of your media. It's the cost to reach these consumers. And they're going to give you a very attractive $1.25 CPM. But you have no idea whether you're reaching your target. So from a marketing perspective in outsourcing, you always have to peel the onion. And it starts with understanding who your target consumer is, that prime prospect that you're talking to, that female, 25 to 49, who may be the head of household, decision maker, mother of 3, what you stand for, the brand promise, the brand position, and then what your strategy is. And then as you keep those things core, and you start to look at all the outsourcing options, it's a way that you can vet through whether this makes sense or not. Because digital advertising, as an example, is here to stay, and it's going to get bigger and more impactful. And it's for all of you, your opportunity to be P&G in a medium that's not broadcast network primetime TV that none of us can afford. But you've really got to look at it and make sure that you're buying the right media and you're targeting within your target consumer, because you'll send a message out and they'll impress you with high impressions, multi-millions of impressions that they're creating, but you have no idea if that's the consumer that you want to receive the message.
Is it still a Wild West when it comes to advertising on the internet, or is there some discipline that's developed?
There's more discipline. When you look at digital as a whole, you can look at banner advertising, which we've all go to Yahoo, and the leaderboards come up. You can look at search engine optimization or search engine marketing, and those are the areas for the brands within our portfolio. I like that medium the best because you can get laser sharp focus in terms of who you want to talk to, and you can understand them. And I think we all realize this. You can marry somebody's internet search history with their credit card purchase history. And you can go, they're calling it the pathway to purchase. Hopefully we've heard this term. I don't want to be overly technical. But we have the ability to understand if Jane Doe is seeking to understand something, or if she's ready to make a purchase. Or has she purchased the category but not purchased us? And we have the ability to serve up an ad that's either, let me answer your question, or it's, here's a $5 coupon, try my product. And so you can be very wild, wild west, and you can have low cost per thousand, and you could spend $500,000 and have no result. Or you can be very precise and make sure that you're reaching the individual that you know as a candidate to buy your product.
Interesting. Well, I want to talk about more a little bit of technology, but just get Patrick and Jim's input on logistics. Is that a growing trend? Is that mature? Like, are companies waking up today and saying, more companies waking up today and saying, geez, should really outsource my logistics, or have companies really already kind of thought about that, going through that process?
Yeah, major issues going on in the logistics world. Of course, there's the direct-to-consumer aspect that's out there with Amazon, with drugstore.com, and all those folks out there. So, all these issues where products are going from a warehouse to a consumer's home, that's just blowing up logistics and bringing a magnifying glass on how things are being done. And how that's affected us in our industry is FDA has really gotten involved and is looking at this issue of temp control within warehouses. So because of that, more companies that are out there who own their own warehouses and have antiquated warehouses without temp control, they're looking to go out and see what's available in what they call 3PL, third-party logistics world. So there's a real grab out there for temp-controlled space that we're dealing with right now, and that's the real trend, and that's forcing outsourcing. Because a lot of these companies that own their own warehouses have had these warehouses for years and years and years and haven't had to deal with it. So I'm getting emails from clients day in and day out, what's your humidity, what's your temp control, and they're having these conversations because it all started with that direct-to-consumer business. The consumers are more knowledgeable, they're asking questions, where is my product sitting before it gets to my home? Because of that, that's bringing that to light to FDA. FDA is starting to ask, and it's just rolling and rolling and rolling into the need for more space in that manner. Yeah.
Jim, you want to talk about the finance and accounting outsourcing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's just so much room for finance and accounting outsourcing to grow. I read a recent report that showed 60% of companies that are currently outsourcing part of their finance and accounting. So at least two processes, but not necessarily the entire finance function. 60% of those companies that are outsourcing finance or accounting are over $1 billion in revenue. The companies that size also have the option of creating what's called shared service centers, where they effectively create their own captive outsourcing center, where one shared service center would serve all of their divisions or business units. But even with that option, there's probably about 25% of businesses are not doing any outsourcing or shared services at all. They're still doing everything the old-fashioned way, internally and in a decentralized manner. As you go down in company size, say for companies below 100 million in revenue, it's over 50% that are not outsourcing. And those smaller companies really don't have the option of setting up a shared service center because many of them are already only one site or one business unit. So there's still a tremendous market out there for the small to medium-sized enterprise. And it's ironic because people usually think of smaller entrepreneurial companies being more nimble and doing trendier things, but it's actually the opposite in this case. It seems like the outsourcing trend caught on as a management technique in the larger companies first. It's far more commonplace there, and it really has yet to percolate down to the middle market.
I did want to get back to the technology thing, and I do want to try to keep us on track here. So let's just quickly, maybe Matt, you could add a little bit more on the technology piece and how you're leveraging digital marketing to be more effective in getting the word out about your clients. And I know, Jim, you can probably shed some light on that too. So let's go Matt first.
Sure. So, the name of the game for a brand obviously is to build awareness. And typical small to mid-sized brands don't always have the big budgets that Procter & Gamble and J&J have. So how do they build that awareness? Well, let's look at mediums where we have low cost. Talk about the digital space, leveraging social media, potential print campaigns. And, really, the technology has evolved so much that you can get laser sharp focused in terms of who you're connecting with. And I think that as you screen, bringing it back to outsourcing, as you screen agencies that you want to work with to help you do that, you need to understand the terminology, you need to understand what you want to accomplish, because they're all going to tell you that they can do digital advertising. They're all going to tell you that they can do search advertising. But there's definite layers to that, and the old adage of 50% of my marketing works and 50% doesn't, I just don't know which 50%. The digital avenue has provided you the opportunity to be much more impactful, and it gives you the opportunity. If you flight television, you live with that 30-second spot once it airs, and you live with the results. We have situations with our agencies where on a weekly basis we're improving our digital advertising to increase whatever our call to action is, driving them to the website, are we getting click-through, are we driving the number of impressions, so on and so forth. So it becomes very fluid and can be enhanced on a weekly basis.
Well, that must be huge for these smaller companies that don't have the big budgets to kind of try and fail.
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to demonstrate to a retailer that you're investing in the branding and the awareness. There are a lot of retailers out there that they're into search and they're into social, but as a brand, when you go to the retailer and say, hey, I'm doing a lot of search media or digital media, they kind of frown upon it because they can't see it, they can't feel it or touch it on TV. But I think that rather than saying, hey, I know I'm reaching women 18 to 49 on American Idol on Tuesday night, you can say, I reached 10 million consumers and I drove them to Walmart. My message was go to Walmart. And I can show you the click-through rates, I can show you, you can marry up the credit card data with the advertising function. So I don't shy away from that, but it's because people think about it so generically and they don't understand the true power of the targeting capability that's why you kind of get that response.
Interesting. That's why we all see targeted ads now, right? Gee, I was just thinking about that, and now I see an ad about it. So and I'm sure that will continue to change.
Absolutely.
Jim, I know in our group at FESNAC, outsourcing, you've utilized technology to deliver more efficiency. Can you talk about some of the technology that's available and what you've leveraged?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the cloud has really taken outsourcing to a whole new level. The proliferation of accounting packages that are available on the cloud now enable our team and our client to see information in real time at the same time. It has made it truly possible to have an accounting department, halfway across the country. It's no longer necessary to have an accounting department down the hall. It works seamlessly wherever we are. We're able to process an accounts payable payment run and have whoever's authorized at the client to approve that payment can approve it on their iPhone. Literally click off on what they want to pay and what they don't. So it's really made everything seamless and really made outsourcing a much more realistic option than it may have been in the past. And it's not just cloud accounting systems. It's even social media, just the ability to interact virtually between our team and internal teams at the client in various ways, whether it be WebEx or video conferencing. As the millennial generation comes up into executive positions, they're more and more comfortable with that sort of thing, being able to do business at a high level without being face to face. It just makes so much more possible.
I'm pretty sure I know what kind of answer I'll get from these guys, but we can turn to them a little bit. But I thought to close, Doug, you've gone through this process, you've looked at it analytically for your company's best business model to be competitive and cost conscious and efficient. Give companies that are thinking about outsourcing, as these folks are running into companies that potentially are thinking about outsourcing or have considered it, what is it today that makes outsourcing such a smart business model to compete?
I think Jim was just touching on the virtual reality of the operating systems being fully accessible out of house is huge. When we integrated and went out to outsourcing, we actually had our own internal complete Sage ACPAC accounting package with an MRP system, full warehouse, everything. And when at the time when the decision was being made, I was not a proponent of shutting that system off and turning it off. We had control. I could touch and feel it. I knew where the driver was. There were a lot of pieces to that. Now, since we've done it and evolved, it's taken, it took a good year to actually evolve fully over to the FESNAC system with everything we're doing and the OHL warehouse system. It's all virtual. I can literally sit at home, I hate to admit it, and I can run the business from my dining room table. A lot of times I'll get the AP at 7 o'clock in the morning before I leave the house. I pull out the iPhone and I'll actually approve the AP before I walk out the door. That's things that you couldn't imagine, 3-5 years ago, that make it fully functional and one person can kind of do it all, with being able to focus and touch. I think the future is going to hold actually having integrated systems, so the OHL and the FESNAC accounting system and my own planning software package that I use internally, we're all integrated together on a cloud. Those are the next steps to come that are really going to take it. What does all that matter to anybody in this room? People, overhead. It's an elimination of the cost in your business, and you're able to drop that straight to your bottom line. And we've done it over a 2-year period. I won't share the actual numbers, but we've gone from, some of that was stabilizing the brands. We've gone from stabilizing, investing, somewhere over the $5 million negative number to now we're doing, close to that half a year on the positive line. We've done that just by evolving the business and outsourcing. And I think one last thing I want to touch on quick, and Matt, what is Prel shampoo holding in the market right now? We saw that last week. Was it shampoo? Was it holding 50th? I thought.
In terms of rank or share?
Rank or share.
Right.
Right. So was it?
So Walmart, your top 25 SKU.
Prel shampoo? How is that possible? It's possible because I can get it to the market in a cost-effective manner. Bottom line, I can compete with the big boys in the world on the cost side. And we're able to do that by holding the market. Everybody tells the story that the brand just won't die, but it just won't die because it's a cost-effective brand, and it still is, even at the small numbers in the big world of shampoo and the petty business as it is. And I'll share with you, I'm doing plus 25% margin at Walmart. That's pretty darn good in the shampoo business. And that's only because of the dynamic of this relationship.
Everybody from Walmart here, man.
What's that?
Everybody from Walmart's here.
That's okay, they're making their
Are you
margins.
sure? I think Walmart has like cameras everywhere.
They're making their margins.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
thing that really highlights is that, without outsourcing, there's a strong business out there that consumers want. They want product. And without outsourcing, they couldn't get it. It'd be gone. So you see something that's bringing value to everybody. Walmart gets value for Prel against maybe something that's bigger like Pert that doesn't have the same margins. So Walmart's winning, consumers winning, the manufacturer's winning, and the people providing the outsourcing service is winning. So, and what's the reason why it could exist? And I don't want to be the opinion leader here because Doug is, he owns the brand, but I don't think the brand would be here without outsourcing.
No.
And so you have something that's
I
demanded
did
by
the
the
study,
marketplace.
remember? I
You did study.
They wouldn't happen.
You have something here that's demanded by the marketplace where everybody wins and wouldn't be here without outsourcing. So I think Pearl is a great example of why outsourcing can really be a benefit to everybody.
Well, that's exciting to me because that gives you choices as a consumer, right? And I think as consumers, that's what you want. And you don't want to be forced, like you said earlier, into only a few SKU compression brands that the retailers driving you to select. So I think that is a good time to kind of wrap it up. What I do want to do is try to take advantage of these experts that we have up here, folks that have been doing this for companies and for their own companies, and see if there's any questions that people have, something they want to maybe dig into a little deeper. Love to have hear some questions. Yes, Barry.
Doug, my name is Barry Hurwitz, and thank you very much for being here tonight. Can you dimensionalize for us, and I don't want you to give any information you're not comfortable with,
Sure.
but can you dimensionalize for us the size of your business in terms of revenue in relation to the number of headquarters staff?
Full-time staff at the moment is around a head count of 3 to 4 on any given day. I'm sharing some resources with another business in my building. That's based on a top-line revenue of around, or close to $13 million a year.
So you have 3 to 4 full-time people.
Yes.
That's not 30 or 40,
No.
but that's 3 to 4 full-time
Four
people.
full-time people. In truth, to be honest, there's 2 full-time, and then I have shared time of 3 other individuals, 50% staff when I need them. I shared their time a little bit, but really focused on the business every day, 2 full-time. And then I do have a regulatory affairs doctor that I keep on retainer every month.
So
He's
you're
been
really-
spending a lot of time in our office
So-
lately with my crew.
So I've been coming over to see
He's been
Matt.
outsourcing.
So Matt and Mike, to get your quote earlier of Tom Peters, Doug is really able to focus his energy on what he does best.
Yeah,
Where if he had to do the accounting, he's going to end up having to hire somebody that he might not need full-time.
Right.
That's it.
I'll give you another example. One of our clients, it was in a similar situation. It's even more dramatic. There's a brand out there called Midnight, and it's one of the first all-natural sleep supplements that did not position themselves as an all-natural sleep supplement. They put themselves in against sleep medicine, and oh, by the way, we're all natural. And she brought her business into us. It was about $3.5 million. And last year, she shipped about 18 or 19 million. One employee, her, the owner. And Holly sold that business for about $40 million. And with one employee. So she used outsourcing for everything. She sold it to a bigger pharmaceutical company, and she did that all with one person on her payroll.
So the dictionary next to scalable, there's Holly's picture, and that shows you how you can leverage outsourcing to really create significant value, enterprise value in the business. So.
Not to dogpile into this subject too much, but I'll give you, for instance, as of today, I'll put Sarah on the spot. We missed our first quarter top line revenue by how much, Sarah, by percentage? Top line revenue first quarter, we missed it by 3-4%, wasn't it? but EBITDA, we're up 16%. My costs are all relative to my sales because everything's outsourced. I'm not carrying a ton of overhead. I'm not carrying a ton of, so it's relative costs, and it's, that's a pretty good thing. You can't argue with that.
But as the business owner, how do you get comfortable with the idea, you guys talked earlier about giving up control, and when the brand is yours, you really want to have control. What does it take for you to get comfortable with giving up that control, where you can't call the factory and say, I need another 100,000 units, or we need to ship 3 extra pallets to Walgreens today?
But you can. You can do all those things. I do those things on a daily basis. Really good relationships with my manufacturers now. They're running on 90-day lead times. But that's not uncommon even if I own the factory. That would be a good lead time for a factory that size. OHL, Fasneck, Emerson, very reachable. Can we give them a push at the end of this month? Sure, we'll see what we can do. So all those things that you don't lose control of the ability to do that. You might lose the personal relationship with the person on the other end of the phone to some degree, but you don't lose that ability at all.
Typically, in our business model, they come through the door because they have the rose-colored glasses of, I'm going to be in every retailer in America, and the Emerson Group is the firm that's going to get me there. Then there's that harsh reality of, you're probably not right for Target, it's going to take some time, so on and so forth. Then, Patrick will talk about the number of clients that come in and talk about the selling, and that's what they want, that's why they're there. And we take the opportunity to educate them on the benefits of shared logistics. And you see the complexion of the conversation shift 180. And then 3 months later, they're back in the door saying, you know what, I'd like to explore what that looks like. So, Barry, it's interesting you talk about control. This question wasn't asked, but I want to take the liberty to offer a piece of advice humbly in my 3.5 years working for an outsourced company and seeing your side of it. The number one thing that I worry about, and that I would worry about if you were the client, or I was the client, is trust. Because you can deal with any business issue that comes up as long as you have trust. And when you think about how you want to go to your outsourced market, examine what are the things for you that make a trusting relationship. And when you evaluate an accounting firm, a logistics firm, or whatever firm, does that organization exemplify? You'll get through the problems. We'll miss the 3% on the shipping side, whatever didn't get out. But we can explain it, we have the information, or we didn't get a distribution. We've had clients come in and say, why am I not in Target? We said the data says that you shouldn't be there. But we'd love to help you grow your business so that you can be there. And when you have that respect and that trust, that's what makes it work. If you don't have the trust on both sides, it's never going to work. And we talked earlier, that's a piece I admire about Scott, because Scott can size that up pretty quickly. And our employee retention is damn near 98%. Yeah. I've known the company for 15 years, and I think I've only 3 people have left the company, and we're now 80 people. Clients, I've never heard a client leave us. So it's that trust is, I think, what keeps that going more than anything.
Any other questions from anybody? Yes.
Emerson's operating essentially the marketing market. What other services do you offer?
From a marketing perspective?
Now, broader.
So selling to the retailer is our core, that's our business. The logistics piece of it, which is your finished good to our warehouse to the trade. And from a marketing perspective, we work in a couple of buckets. There's the consumer marketing angle. There's a coupon redemption service that we administer and manage for the client. We do analytical, shopper and category analytics. So it's kind of a lot of the disciplines that fall under that commercial side of marketing that we offer as a service to the client. But I'd say the 3 buckets are sales, marketing, and logistics.
And then the other things that come up outside of that is, anything that gets bought and sold in the market goes across Scott's desk. Scott's our managing partner, owner. So we've even had deals where one of our clients bought another client because they're being shipped from Emerson Healthcare. We don't have to tell the retailer. Because in the retailer's eyes, Emerson Healthcare is the vendor. So it's just a money transaction. But any business that is bought or sold in the health, beauty care, OTC side of the business, Emerson is involved in. And with our relationship with FESNAC, we have an offering where we can introduce you to anywhere from, Bob and I were just talking about it before we started up, mezz funding people, up to banks, up to senior debt, and you know, and they can get involved. And that's probably, Matt, keep me honest here, probably about 25% of Scott Emerson's time is in that world, in that banking, deal-making, acquisition, and selling off of assets part of the business. He is the guy, if you look into health, beauty care, OTC, he is the guy that's involved in all those deals. So, and we also take ownership positions in probably all the new companies that come in. We have some legacy companies that we didn't have ownership in, but anything within the last 10 years, we have an ownership position in those companies that come to work with us.
One of the, if I can just touch on it a little bit too, it's rather unique in that although Emerson is the front face with the retailer, you can still, the retailer still knows who you are. And that's a little bit of a thing that most people wouldn't pick up on. There was a time when we thought our core competency was marketing and sales, and we had a really strong presence out with the Emerson reps. We were going to all the meetings, doing everything, and you're welcome to go do that and actually sit in those meetings with the retailers, and retailers recognize who you are by your brand name. But you have the benefit of being under the big umbrella of Emerson Healthcare, so when the actual retailer writes a purchase order, it's rather easy on her.
Yeah, we're successful if the buyer says, hey Doug, how you doing? I know you're from Ultimark. And the backroom person, the rebuyer, says, I never heard of Ultimark. That's what we want.
And that's how the relationship's going for us.
We don't need that, we don't need that, you know, hey, you're the guys that own Prel. We don't want that. We represent Prel, we're from Emerson Group, but Doug is the man behind that brand, and we pride ourselves in delivering that.
Time for one more question? Great. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully this was informative. As I mentioned, this is part of the Growth Summit series, so if you're interested, make sure that we have your information. Obviously, we have your information because we send it out, but make sure you let us know that you want to be invited to other events. There's some hors d'oeuvres in the back, and the bar will be open, and everybody will be around for networking. We have the room till, 8:30 or so feel free to stay and socialize. Thank you very much, everyone.